Welcome to our channel. Today, we are excited to share with you 3 real-world vampire stories. Our first story begins in the year 1932, taking place in the bustling city of New Orleans, Louisiana. In the early 1930s, somewhere in the French Quarter of New Orleans, there lived 2 brothers, John and Wayne Carter. These 2 brothers were incredibly handsome, with pale skin and piercing eyes, and had a reputation for being charming and charismatic. However, there was a dark secret to their good looks. They were vampires. As the legend is told across the city, the vampire brothers would seduce their victims, primarily young women, and then drain their blood. The 2 brothers were even rumored to have the ability to control their victims with their minds, making them unable to resist their advances. However, their long history of terrorizing the city under a shroud of darkness would soon end. One evening, a young girl ran down Royal Street, visibly panicked. A police officer intercepted her, and she told him a wild story. She had been tied up by 2 brothers, along with several other victims, and held captive so the brothers could drink their blood. The girl claimed she could only escape because the brothers had been careless in securing her ropes. Skeptical but curious, the police followed the girl back to the home on the corner of Royal and St. Anne, the home of the Carter brothers. What they found there was horrifying. Inside the home, the police discovered 4 other victims, half dead and tied to their chairs. Their wrists were wrapped with bandages, moist and stained with blood. And in another room, they found 2 more bodies wrapped in blankets. The stench of death filled the air. The Carter brothers had a routine. They would leave each morning just before daybreak and return every evening just after dark. As soon as they got home, they would take the bandages off their victims and reopen the wounds with a knife, drinking their blood until they were satisfied. Then they would dress the wounds again and say nothing, giving no concern for their victims' well-being. The dark truth is that they were using these people as nothing more than a food source. But the Carter brothers were in for a surprise on this particular night. Unaware that one of their victims had escaped, they came home as usual, and the police immediately apprehended them. The brothers realized there was no way out of this situation, so they dropped to their knees and confessed to their crimes, begging for death. The brothers told the authorities that they were vampires, and that if they were released, they would have no choice but to continue killing, because their need for blood was beyond their control. So they were tried as serial killers, convicted, and eventually executed. Mercy was a young woman who lived in the late 19th century in the small town of Exeter, Rhode Island. She was the daughter of a farmer named George Brown and the sister of 2 brothers, Edwin and Oliver. A mysterious illness befell the Brown family that weakened and sickened its members. The townspeople believed that a vampire caused the condition, and the only way to stop it was to dig up the suspected vampire and burn their heart. According to the beliefs of the time, vampires were corpses that had been brought back to life by demonic forces. They were said to have a thirst for human blood and could spread their curse to others by biting them or drinking their blood. Mercy was born in 1864 and died in 1892 at the young age of 28. She was buried in the Chestnut Hill Cemetery in Exeter, along with her father and brothers. The townsfolk had already dug up George and Oliver's bodies and burned their hearts, but the illness continued to afflict the family. Suspecting that Mercy was the vampire, the townspeople dug up her body shortly afterward and found that her heart was still intact, an irrefutable sign to them that she was still alive, even though she was clearly dead. And so, in an attempt to protect themselves and their loved ones, they burned Mercy's heart, believing that this would finally end the illness that had plagued her family for so long. According to local legend, Mercy's ghost continues to wander the Chestnut Hill Cemetery at night, searching for her stolen heart. Some say that if you visit her grave on a moonlit night, you can hear her crying out in agony. But the haunting of Mercy Brown extends beyond the cemetery. Some people in Exeter claim to have seen her ghost wandering the city streets at night, and others say that they have seen her in their dreams. Some people even believe that Mercy's ghost can possess the living, causing them to become weak and sickly, just like her family was before her death. The legend of Mercy Brown has been passed down through generations in Rhode Island, and has even inspired books and movies. But despite its popularity, the tale remains shrouded in mystery and intrigue. The legend continues to be a popular part of Rhode Island's cultural heritage. For example, the town of Exeter still holds an annual vampire feast, where locals and tourists gather to celebrate the legend of Mercy Brown. Whether or not you believe in the legend of Mercy Brown, one thing is certain: it remains a fascinating part of Rhode Island's cultural heritage. So the next time you're in Exeter, visit the Chestnut Hill Cemetery and see if you can catch a glimpse of the ghostly figure of Mercy Brown, the Rhode Island vampire. In the mid-1840s, the Ray family was a large farming family who lived in the town of Jewett City, located in Griswold, Connecticut. Over a few years, several family members died suddenly and under mysterious circumstances. The first signs of illness showed strange symptoms, such as a loss of color in their skin and a thirst for blood. It was as if the disease had turned them into vampires. At the time, the belief in vampires was quite common in many parts of the world. Therefore, it was not abnormal for the Ray family to have used the explanation of vampirism to make sense of their tragedy. The surviving family members decided to take drastic action and dig up the bodies of their deceased loved ones. Upon doing so, they immediately burned their bodies, believing that this would protect them from the undead. But the story doesn't end there. While burning the bodies, the Ray family reported hearing strange noises coming from the graves of their loved ones. Some even claimed to have seen their dead relatives rising from their graves, their eyes glowing with malefic light. Terrified, the family fled from the cemetery and never returned. The legend of the Ray family and their vampire attacks quickly spread throughout Griswold and the surrounding towns. Naturally, many were skeptical, but some truly believed that the undead were haunting the Rays. Some even claimed to have seen the vampires themselves, lurking in the shadows and stalking the streets at night. Even now, the local people of Griswold say that on certain nights, the ghosts of the Rays can be spotted wandering the cemetery, their eyes glowing with a sinister light. Others claim to have heard their screams echoing through the streets, a reminder of the terrible fate that befell them. Despite the fear and superstition surrounding the legend, the truth of what happened to the Ray family remains a mystery. Some speculate that the family may have been suffering from a rare medical condition, causing them to exhibit the symptoms of vampirism. However, others believe the story was a creative hoax, designed to scare and manipulate the townspeople. But for those who believe in the legend, the story of the Ray family serves as a cautionary tale. If vampires truly exist, what other horrors lurk in the darkness, waiting to prey on the unsuspecting?